Hey, what's up everybody? Lawler here with another power ranking, this time for the European region, and I gotta say, this is getting more and more difficult. We spent a little bit of time on stream today talking about these and trying to break them down, but realistically speaking, other than the top three, top four, it's almost impossible to figure out who goes where. So again, I think our lists are going to vary quite a bit. But before we get into that list, as always, if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up, as well as making sure to hit subscribe and turning on notifications. And if you guys want to support me directly, the easiest way to do so is all the social medias that are rotating in the bottom left. You can find those down in the description as well. Make sure you guys go give those a like and follow. All right, so we've got EU Power Rankings for Week 3. We have wrapped up officially the first regional event for Europe. We've also gotten through 3 weeks of the grid, and shoutouts to the people that make these. I have 2 lovely graphics showing all the points because I know you guys have been asking for that. I also have all the teams included as well. So visually, there's a lot of information, but hopefully this helps and makes it easy to follow along based upon where teams are. I wish I had more results for Magnifico. Because they do not play in the grid, it is very hard to put them in a place. Teams like Singularity, Libertas, and all the others that are from like 5 to 10 took us legitimately 45 minutes to an hour to even have a general idea of where they may place. It's super difficult in Europe, especially with where people are showing up and where they're placing. And then you've also got teams like Dignitas, where currently it looks like Violent Panda is dealing with tendonitis and trying to deal with stuff with his thumb. So it's like, do they sub in Jesse and allow him to heal, and like what the situation is with that? So that whole situation is interesting. Also, shout outs to Violent Panda for hanging out in the chat while we are doing this, along with some of the other pros. It's always interesting because in the middle of us talking about these, we also get to kind of pick their brains about what they think and where the teams they think belong, with or without their bias. So some exciting insight. If you guys always want to, twitch.tv/Lawler, come hang out. We try to talk about these regularly and basically turn my stream into Talk It League. So rather than focusing on the gameplay, we focus on all the other stuff, the post analysis, the game breakdowns, why teams are performing the way that they are. And sometimes we get some awesome people to stop by and hang out with us as well. So ultimately, it is very difficult to pick these, but any of the teams that are displayed somewhere right below me in the grid are obviously ones that are in consideration. It's just very difficult to talk and break down all 16 plus teams from the grid, as well as the 32 open qualifiers for regionals. So we tried to make this an exclusive list, but realistically speaking, any of these teams have a chance to make it and are competitive. But honorable mentions obviously to Barcelona, Libertas, Singularity, Dignitas. There's just so much talent going on in this region, it's almost impossible. So with that said, we're going to try to crush through these. First things first is going to be Liquid. Liquid taking a drop. They were 8 last week, dropping down to 10. Haven't really had the best results. Obviously, the grid, they do have a bit of a performance here to bounce back, but this is more so other teams performing better and dropping them down rather than their results being poor and them being the reason they're getting dropped down. So the hard thing about placing these is not only strength of schedule, but also taking into account, I want to weigh regionals heavier. But at the same time, if regionals are 2+ weeks ago, how do we really balance this out? So I had a really hard time with trying to do this. Chat ended up voting on the last 2 spots, and they ended up giving it to Liquid, and rightfully so. That's who I ended up picking as well. But Liquid, in the most recent week of the grid, ended up dropping to Libertas 3-1, beating Chalk 3-0, and then going to 5 against Vitality. If they end up beating Vitality in that 5th game, then all of a sudden Vitality doesn't go on to win the whole situation. Maybe Liquid has the strength of schedule and ends up playing. Like, there's so many what ifs that possibly could play out here, but Liquid is still a team that I think is in consideration. Talking with Violent Panda and stuff, he still considers them like a top 5, top 6, top 7 team, and rightfully so. But I still want to give credit to the teams that are showing results recently and making it and breaking into this top 10 list. Realistically speaking, he does think that some of these teams are just kind of the hot commodity right now. But when it all boils down and goes and talks long term, there is 6 that are solidified that he has in mind. So some respect being put on some of these teams' names. I'm not going to tell you exactly which ones those are, though. At number 9 is going to be Top Blokes, another team that in consideration with Liquid and Dignitas and everything else, could easily be moved up or down, but they did not have a good couple of weeks recently. Most recently, they ended up losing to Oxygen, which is like, okay, Oxygen's a really good team, I understand that. They then dropped down and then lose to Singularity as well, who had a pretty solid week, eventually losing to Giants themselves. So Top Blokes is going to end up dropping down. The week before, they didn't do too well either, actually dropping to Monkeys in best of 5 as well. So unfortunately for Top Blokes, 2 not so solid performances. I personally believed that the reason why they're in this situation is I did not have expectations of Archie to perform at the top level that he did. In order for me to put Top Lokes higher up on the list, I need to see that this is going to be a team effort and it's not just reliant on one player. I still think they're a very solid team. Definitely going to give people a run for their money. They've taken notable wins off of top tier rosters as well. So it will be interesting to see how Top Lokes continues to trend. But this is a team, and I will say this, 6 through 10 was just me messing and plugging and playing, and just honestly, you could throw dice and give an answer for any of these. It's so ridiculous. Top Loke stays the exact same, but Guild is going to jump up here at number 8. Credit to Guild. They do go from 10th to 8th, so 2 spots up. Part of the reason why I think this is because of the fact that they were able to boot camp this week. The in-person chemistry, the ability to sit and talk with your teammates and work through difficulties is really beneficial, and they are trying to figure out some of the issues that we've been seeing, and they are getting better and better. The results showing for and speaking for themselves. A little bit of recency bias in this one, but ultimately Guild trending in the right direction. I think that's going to continue to go on, and that's why I have them in the place that I do. At number 7 is going to be Solary, who had some pretty solid results. And see, jumping into that 8th place spot, the big benefit here is their recent results are really benefiting them, as well as trying to take some consideration from regional results. This was another one I had a really hard time with. There are some players that were in the chat that did mention that they think that Solary is not a team that they should really be in consideration with. I think some of it was obviously friendly banter. But Solary was a team that I didn't have initially in the top 10, and I do think this one might be a little bit out of order. But I can't ignore the results, and I'm trying to be as objective as possible with some of these. I think it's so difficult to leave biases and recency bias alone. But ultimately, this is a team that has shown that they can perform. They are tied 5 through 8 in regionals, and then within the next couple of weeks, they have some results to also go 5 to 8. That's why I have them on the tail end of it. But realistically speaking, you look at the results from others, they're tied with Guild, same spot, right above them. You then look here as well, they do a little bit better than Grid. So point-wise, they do have the nod, but I do see these teams below them as probably better, but I'm letting the points and the objective side of where they are placing determine how this is working out. So this is a really tough one for me. I think, again, until I get to like the top 4, I'm not going to be too confident, if I'm being honest. This week was a pain in the butt. It was so difficult. Number 6 is going to be Endpoint, another team that I think is kind of the benchmark for all these teams, whether they're 5, 6. I think they're right in the middle of the pack. They've had good performances here and there. They've also fell a little bit short during regionals, but in the past couple of weeks, they've been competitive. They've also taken notable wins off of top tier rosters. I do think this team is something that I wish I saw out of Guild or Top Lokes, in the sense that when they win, it is true team effort. Everybody has a role. Everybody is impactful. Without the team playing as a cohesive unit, they do not win. I think teams like Guild and Top Lokes and Liquid have a higher skill ceiling than someone like Endpoint, but right now Endpoint in their consistency is part of the reason why they are where they are. They also are in consideration because they are at least in the top 12 when it comes to regionals, and then when it comes to the grid as well, they are in the top 5. So Endpoint having some leg up on the other teams. The only one, obviously, Solar is kind of that anomaly, but due to recency and different results, their consistency over in the grid with top 8 performances, some semifinals as well, is why they get the nod in that regard. We then jump over to 5th, and these are going to make a little bit more sense, possibly a little bit less argument. I have Triple Trouble, and some people think this is a little bit too high. Some people think that's just a fluke, but you cannot deny the fact that Triple Trouble is 3rd in overall placements for the grid most recently, as well as getting a victory. So I think that's a really big deal. It shows that on any given day, this team can show up and have a solid day from start to finish and close it out. So obviously their biggest win comes over in their victory when they ended up beating Oxygen, but Triple Trouble is a team that most people do not expect to have the greatest of performances, but they continue to show that on certain days they can really step up and give people a run for their money. So Triple Trouble, I think, could be adjusted maybe below Endpoint, but the results are higher, so we are going to give the objective route here to Triple Trouble. At number 4 is going to be Oxygen, taking a drop down. Previously, they were in 2nd. They are now down to in 4th. I also forgot to mention Triple Trouble. They are going up 2 spots, while Endpoint is going down 1. So I don't know if I should have mentioned those every single time, but they do have them next to the name, so they're pretty easy to follow. I think Oxygen is a team that, even though they have results that regional event is starting to cause a little bit of problem because all the teams ahead of them have results that are more notable. So Oxygen, I think, is a team that can be hit and miss. They can also be extremely deadly and have shown that. Their grid performances and the consistency in the grid is part of that reason as well. But they just haven't been able to eke out the win. A lot of these other teams that are ahead of them have. So that is pretty much the difference maker. These teams have shown that they can win it all, while Oxygen just quite hasn't gotten there yet. Super talented team. Still a lot of eyes on Fair and his involvement, and loving what I'm seeing with that. Similar to what we're seeing with AXB over on version 1. I just think this team has a lot more talent. The pass plays are developing really well and are trending still in that in-between. I think they're a really talented team. They're going to be the team that fights for a land spot and is going to make other teams below them have to push through, which Oxygen is not going to make it easy. So pretty solid here. So 2 and 3 could have some arguments, and I ended up breaking this down step by step based upon individual results, where they placed, giving a point to who placed further. And in the end, I'm going to reveal 3 and 2 at the same exact time. It's actually Giants and BDS staying in the exact same spot. Obviously, it makes number 1 pretty obvious, but because I went step by step, at first it was BDS because they performed well and regionals ended up winning that. That weighs heavily. But then Giants over the past couple of weeks ended up winning more and having better results with that as well. And this is where it gets really difficult, because even though I personally believe BDS is a better team, Giants is showing the results, and that's where I got conflicted, is like, how do I weigh these teams based upon my personal opinion while still trying to be somewhat objective about the results and how those things speak? Because at the end of the day, results are the only thing that matters. You can have stellar offense and dominate on the field, but until you put a goal away, it does not matter. So I had a really hard time with putting Giants above, but when I looked at it objectively and I said, this team is going this place in this tourney or this event, the Giants are doing it better than BDS, even though BDS, I think, still gets an honorable mention and will always get the nod because they did win the regionals. That is over the course of 2 weeks, over 4 days. That is a very big deal. So BDS, I think, is the better team, but as of right now, Giants is having better results, and I'm still trying to figure out how I want to weight these. Eventually, at the end of the day, it comes down to my personal opinion, but I think Giants and BDS could be interchanged. I do personally believe, though, at the end of the day, BDS is the better team. So that's tough. And then obviously you guys can figure out the last one. There's not a whole lot to say. It's Vitality, obviously number 1 again. This is the best team, and it shows their resilience. If you guys didn't watch the grid recently, in week 3 they ended up getting dropped really early. They ended up reversing 2 teams back to back to make it into the top 8, and then from there was smooth sailing. Just something about day 3 Vitality. I was kind of curious on how they were going to look. They then got in the final playoff bracket, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. You're getting to see Libertas put up a fight. They go to 3 OTs and stuff, and I talk about this all in my last video. If you guys haven't seen the recap, go check that out. But watching Vitality, as soon as I saw them hit against Libertas, even though Libertas is not regarded as the best of the best or a team, one that I do have in consideration for kind of this spot. They've only done it 1 week, though, so that's why we give Liquid the nod. But in that game, you could just tell Vitality was going to win it all. It didn't matter who they were playing against. This was a team that you're like, yep, they have it. Same exact situation, and the same reference I'm going to make is when they played against Energy in Season 7. You just knew that they were going to win. All day I was like, this is the best offense we've ever seen in G2. G2 looks astounding. And then I saw Vitality play it. I'm like, nope, never mind. Vitality wins. Whether that overtime determined all that, who knows? We'll never know. But Vitality just had that it factor in that semifinal and continues to be the best in Europe. They set a standard that I think is very difficult. We talked a lot during my stream today about the comparisons between Space Station and Vitality and some of the parallels that could be made. And it's a really exciting competition. It just makes me really upset that we haven't seen international competition since Madrid in Season 8. So the whole international competition is something that I'm desperately missing, and part of the reason why is I want to see these top dogs play against each other. But that is my top 10. It's a very difficult list to make. It's super impossible to try to figure out where I'm placing people, and I'm still trying to figure out objectively versus my personal opinion and who I think. But at the end of the day, I think the top 4 is a pretty good list. After that is just throw darts at a board and wish it luck. Because honestly, you could mix and match a couple of these. Endpoint possibly could be higher. Solary could be lower. Some of these could be high. It's so difficult. So I'm curious on what your guys' lists are. Make sure you guys drop those in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you got. That is going to wrap it for this video, you guys. We got power rankings for North America coming out tomorrow, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But as always, I greatly appreciate the love and support. Give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and we will see you next time. Peace.